All right, we are now live on YouTube, and at 6:37 p.m. on June 1st, going to call to order this special meeting of the Easton Reading Region 9 Joint Boards of Education being held remotely pursuant to Executive Order 7B. We'll also call to order the Reading Board of Education, noting that all 7 members are present, and ask Easton and Region 9 to please call to order.
Call to order this special meeting for the Easton Board of Education at 6:38 p.m. Members present, Jeff Parker, Randy Hicks, Jenny Cheetah, Devin Weibel, and John Stinson.
And I'll call Region 9 Board of Education special meeting to order at 6:38 p.m. as well. And all board members are present.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Todd. And I'll ask for your assistance throughout the meeting in managing the waiting room, etc. The next item on the agenda is public comment. And before we reach public comment, I'm going to read the same statement that I read last week before public comment, which is that members of the public wishing to comment may do so during the designated public comment periods. Public comment should be limited to topics which are germane to the educational program of Easton and Reading and should be limited to 2 minutes in duration. Public comment concerning any staff member below the rank of superintendent should be addressed to the individual supervisor and will not be permitted in this meeting per board policy. Likewise, personal attacks on other commenters will not be permitted. Commenters are encouraged to adopt the comments of others with which they agree rather than repeating the same comments or arguments.
You muted yourself.
Commenters are discouraged from repeating the same comments of others and are encouraged to adopt those comments. They're also discouraged from repeating comments that were made and submitted in writing to the boards or were made at prior meetings of the board. Public comment will continue until all members of the public wishing to be heard have been heard or until an appropriate motion is made by the boards and passed to terminate public comment. No member of the public shall be recognized twice until all members wishing to be heard have had the opportunity to address the boards once. Members of the public wishing to be recognized should use the raise hand feature in Zoom. This is the button found in the reactions menu or for older versions of Zoom in the participants window. Members of the public will be recognized in the order in which their virtual hands are raised, and only after such members have been recognized will the boards endeavor to identify any other members of the public wishing to be heard. And you will not be able to unmute your microphone until invited to do so by one of the hosts of the meeting. So those are the ground rules unless any members of any boards wish to make any amendments to those rules with respect to public comment this evening.
Well,
Mr. Hocker.
I'll jump in. I think that in light of the way things have gone, we should limit the entirety of public comment to 40 minutes, 40, with the understanding that by general consent, we can extend that period by, let's say, 10-minute increments.
So is that a motion to adopt as a rule for this meeting, a public comment period of the first instance of no more than 40 minutes?
Sure, someone has to be the bad guy, so I will make that motion.
I'll second in Reading.
All right, so that's Chris Hocker and John Riley in Reading. Do Easton or Region 9 want to interpose the same motion?
Do I have
I'll make that motion in Region 9.
It was Maureen in Region 9.
Need a second.
I'll second.
Juliet,
Rosanna. Oh.
I saw Juliet, so. Okay, Juliet,
Do I
just a
have-
second.
Do I have the same motion in Easton?
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff.
And Chris, Randy's got a technical problem. Can you?
I let him in again, but he needs to be turned into a co-host again. Yep. Yep. Okay. So Jeff made the motion in Easton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Devin.
Is there any objection from any of the board to limiting the first public comment to a total period of 40 minutes? Hearing no objection from any of the boards, this procedural motion will be deemed granted and adopted by unanimous consent. Public comment will begin at 6:42 p.m. and the first person I see is Gail Bella's iPad.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's had a great day. So I'm just going to read a little statement and then I'm going to jump out. And it ties in with the survey, actually. So do I personally believe in CRT or accept it as a theory? Yes, of course, it's a vital tool for the Black community to use as a measure of progress. But I'd be happy if I never hear the term CRT being thrown around in our town dialogues again. And I believe most people feel the same way. The erroneous and inapplicable use of the term CRT is keeping our town from making any progress whatsoever. I never hear any of our educators or administrators using the term because it's not an issue. The educational and pedagogical mindset behind a diverse curriculum is that you really cannot teach acceptance and tolerance directly. It just happens naturally as we begin to value people of difference and their history by being inclusive in history, literature, and every other course taught. The theory is that the inclusivity, acknowledgement, and education of different races and LGBTQ community will humanize all people, breaking down stereotypes. That is the way to challenge severe bias, and that's the plan and mission for all public schools in Connecticut. I've been dealing with and teaching this subject to a mostly white university for many years, so believe me, I know what's happening here as I see it in Easton. I understand both sides' concerns fully, although I absolutely agree and support diversity and inclusion education. There is no danger of aggressive or radical uprise or takeover in Easton schools. Just look around you. Curriculum is always adopted to a specific audience. And for instance, I have very different discussions in ethnic American lit courses at Fairfield U, sorry, my phone, than I have when I taught at inner city schools such as Southern State University and Housatonic College in Bridgeport years ago, where my classrooms consisted of mainly Black students. Sorry about the phone.
Thank you, Gail. That's 2 minutes.
Well, I just have one last statement. Is that okay? Two
Very
sentences.
briefly.
Educators and administrators are not out to radicalize students. Neither are our administrators, nor a survey. Maybe one or two teachers are progressive in their views, but that's always been the case since the origins of academia. So I'm in favor of the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. And I was remiss at the top. Please state your name and
Oh, sorry.
street.
Yeah, Crescent Drive, Easton, Connecticut.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next, I see Howard Sherman. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Chris. Can you hear me okay? I just unmuted.
Yes, go ahead.
Yep, thank you very much. So I sat in on last week's meeting, and yeah, I was so proud of the Board of Education for taking the initiative as it related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as the survey to recognize differences among our students in terms of their sexual orientation. And I am known not to always agree with the Board of Education, so I am proud and honored that our Board of Education has been pressing forward with this. I was also unfortunately embarrassed by the discussion about the wordsmithing and the subsequent news coverage associated with that meeting, which suggests that Reading is not open to creating an inclusive community and culture. And I would just ask, having had two children go through the Reading school systems, one of which might be considered traditional in the sense of how she identifies sexually, and the other less traditional from a personal experience. The pressures on kids going through school are enormous in any case, and the additional pressure as it relates to the complexity of the world that we live in makes it even more so. So I am in support of both the diversity and inclusion statement and the questionnaire, and I support the Board of Education in their efforts.
Thank you, Howard. Next, I see Brenda Phelps.
Hello, Brenda Phelps, Indian Hill Road in Reading. First of all, my biggest thought right now is I am in full support of the DEI survey. I think perhaps people have gotten stuck on the first few pages. I encourage people to read forward to page 7. Don't we all want to know if our students feel safe, welcome, and respected in school? Don't we want to know if our students are uncomfortable or embarrassed or have felt humiliated in school? This is a powerful survey that touches on a lot of topics, and people seem to be hung up on the beginning. On page 12, they talk about, I have chances to help decide what is best for the class or school. That's such an important statement. Let's let our students have feedback. Let's let them get to page 20 where they talk about interaction and support of teachers. People have worked very hard for a very long time to write this survey. I respect their language, I respect their choices, and I urge you to support this survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Next, I see Cheryl Cowherd.
Hi, Sheryl Cowherd, Silversmith Lane in Reading. I also am urging you to adopt the survey. It's been so carefully crafted with so much attention on the part of so many board members, and I want to thank you for that work. Our kids know that we're talking about this. And I'm honestly a little bit afraid that when if the kids were to hear, no, the board has voted that they don't want to know these things, I'm very afraid for what it's going to do for the children in the Rainbow Alliance who are only now beginning to feel like they have a place where they are absolutely seen and heard. And so I would urge you to continue with your work because it really looks like a ray of sunshine to these kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Next, I see Kat Carl.
Hello, Kat Carl, previously of Peaceable Street in Reading, Connecticut, now a resident of New York.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Absolutely. Kat Carl, resident of Peaceable Street in Reading, now a resident of New York City. I'm a previous student of all Reading school systems and graduated Joe Barlow in 2015. In my 4 years at Barlow, I was heavily involved in the school's GSA, where one of our only achievements was including queer terms in our sex education class. Terms such as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender, which are considered to be the most basic terms of the LGBTQIA+ community. Up until a group of 14-year-olds petitioned and eventually convinced our teachers and faculty to include these terms, they were not at all involved in our formal education. The point of this anecdote is to highlight just how neglected and silenced we felt. This DEI survey is the first promising step I have seen as a student of Joe Barlow and of the ER9 school system to create a full inclusion and safe school system. The ability for students, parents, and staff to communicate their sense of safety and acceptance within our school district while remaining anonymous is above and beyond nothing I have ever seen. And it's speaking from a purely personal experience. The last thing students who are being bullied need is to feel as if they have an additional target on their back. The main thing is that no one is hurt by this survey. If you don't want to personally take it, you don't have to. It is a fully independent decision that can only offer honest information to our school board in order to make our school systems that much more comfortable so that students can focus on their academics, which is, after all, the whole point of school. As a student, our entire lives are centered around school. It is our daily opportunity for community, and it should not take graduating, going to college, nor eventually moving out of our towns to get that sense of community or acceptance for all students. The survey is something that I would have never dared to dream of as an ER9 student, and it is an opportunity to give voice to those who feel neglected and uncared for. There is absolutely no real reason not to offer this survey, and I personally eagerly await the positive changes that the district will make with this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Next, I see Ken Unfried.
Ken Unfried, 97 Cross Highway, Reading, and I am opposed to the survey and the statement. Diversity and inclusion sounds nice, doesn't it? But take a quick look and you have to acknowledge what everyone knows. Diversity means everyone must look different, have different sexual identities and preferences, but they all must think the same. Equity does not mean the American value of equal opportunity. It means a forced, unfair, unfree, ugly status of equal outcome. Everyone forced down to the lowest common denominator, regardless of ability. No one may achieve more than any other person, no matter how sloppy, feeble, or corrupt the other person may be. Inclusion does not mean we accept and love everyone. It means we despise everyone who doesn't embrace woke. We promote odd things like drag queen story hour. We reject the things that bring happiness and prosperity to everyone. Finish school, get a job, get married, have kids, in that order. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, the words are doublespeak. People use them to pretend to be promoting values. but they are lies, they are immoral, they are anti-free thought, they are anti-free speech, they are threatening, destructive, and enslaving. We should be ashamed to accept this corruption in ourselves and our schools. This is a disaster. Parents will pull their kids out of school. There'll be less support for the school budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Next, I see Dana Benson.
Hi, Dana Benson, 34 Pond Road, Easton. That's 34 Pond Road, Easton. That's not me in the picture kissing Annette Funicello. That's Frankie Avalon. The reason, obviously I've spoke before. I represent a large group of parents and former parents who don't have kids in the school. And we submitted to everybody on the board a open letter. Was mailed today, signed by 88 people opposing these surveys and suggesting that if you're going to go forward with them, at least delay, because at least delay till the fall, because a lot of parents just heard about this thing through the mailer that we put out, and they're quite frankly shocked. And we think the board should take some time to look at this, and certainly the parents need to take some time to look at it and understand it. Thank you very much for your service. I'll leave it at that. I would like, if possible, I guess last time you said that the letter with 88 signatures could not be taken into the record, but if it could be noted. And I would also say this, we're not fluffing it. Those are all real signatures. People had to verify their email addresses. They really exist, and they really are quite upset. That's 88 people. That's almost more than, that is more than it's on this call are speaking through me to you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. Next, I see Agnes.
Hi, Agnes Bebon, Blackrock Turnpike in Easton. I urge the board to vote yes on the surveys as written. If the board is serious about equity and inclusion in our schools, they will advocate for all identities to be included in this survey. This survey did not come out of nowhere. The DEI task force put a lot of time and listened to marginalized people in our community to craft an inclusive survey. Significant time was put into this, and over 500 people signed a petition last summer asking to see DEI work and progress in our town. In the 22 years I've lived in Easton, I have not seen racism, homophobia, transphobia, or discrimination of any kind really tackled in this town. This survey is the first meaningful step I have seen. To those who think this survey needs to wait, I ask you how much longer marginalized students have to wait for acceptance. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Next, I see Lou Andrews.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'd asked for an unmute. Yeah, I am opposed to...
Sorry, your street and town, please, Lou.
Sorry, it's Lou Andrews, High Ridge Road in Reading.
Thank you.
And I am advocating, as many other people are, for a delay in the survey until more people in the town have a chance to digest it and discuss it. I have been talking to people, and I think a lot of parents are aware of it. Certainly people in the school are aware of it, but I've been talking to people who don't have kids in the schools, or people who's had kids in the schools, and this is all new to them. And I would just like to repeat what I said in my open letter to Heather Whaley that I sent to the rest of the board. I don't understand why we're rushing this. Heather herself said she felt in 2 or 3 years that we would kind of look back on this and see it as unnecessary, that this whole idea would be broadly accepted in the community. If you guys believe that, then what is the point of rushing it before everyone's ready to embrace it? There are a lot of issues that everyone would get behind the board on. I think we could talk about test scores compared to other schools in the region. We could talk about the bullying policy, which clearly is not being well enforced. I mean, that's what I got out of the last meeting more than anything else, was not the need for a survey, but the fact that we have a bullying policy that the school still hasn't figured out how to enforce. And the town would get behind the board on all those issues. So why pick something that is so divisive, something you believe the community will naturally come to accept over a period of a year or two? It's just going to create a lot of anger and needless division. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Next, I see Sean Alexander.
Oh, hi. I'm actually Montana. Sean is my husband. I wanted to turn my video on so you could see my face while I speak, but I'm not able to. So I moved to Reading. My street.
What's your street? I'm sorry.
My street is Stepney Road, and I'm in Reading, Connecticut. We moved here a couple of months ago. I grew up in Connecticut. I have an 18-month-old son, and we're planning on having more children and sending them to public schools. We were very excited about this, but we're trying to get more involved in the community. And in hearing about this, kind of freaked me out. The way that I gauge what I'm comfortable with adults asking my children, even if they're 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which this survey would go to, is if a stranger in the park came up and asked my kid these questions, would they be creepy or would they be not creepy? And reading this survey, I would be very concerned about somebody asking my child these questions. Whether or not it's optional, it doesn't matter. I don't need somebody asking our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders about their sexual preferences. I think it's wrong. And secondly, I agree that, I'm a little concerned as to why this is even necessary. If we are already an inclusive neighborhood of people in school, then what is the point of setting out a survey like this? Maybe there should be better policies in place where children feel comfortable coming to you with their grievances. And how you deal with that is more important than putting out this survey that's going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. It's in fact going to be more divisive. And to be honest, it just really freaked me out. The type of questions you're asking are inappropriate. And I understand that you're trying to make people feel more comfortable with each other in school, but why a school board needs to know my kid's sexual preference in 6th grade doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Next, I see Kay Gowrich.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. I am Corey, and I live on Dayton Road. I just wanted to quickly read the email that we had sent over to the Board of Education, just for the public comment. So it starts with, hello, Board of Education. I'm writing to say that I would not allow my child to partake in the survey. And I don't believe the questions within should be asked in our education system at any age. Why is my child being asked by their school how they identify and whom they are sexually attracted to? Childhood used to be a time of innocence, but as our culture has continually sexualized children, they have become the casualties of adult exploration. If our community schools feel the need to open up outlets for children who are struggling with their sexuality, we need to equip the parents and caregivers and students with information and resources. Instead of blanketly asking students how they identify and whom they find sexually attractive. As far as bullying goes, I'm confident that the problem starts at home. Instead of pointing fingers at young children who are most likely mimicking behaviors they see at home or social media outlets, start pointing the fingers at the parents who are raising these children. There is never an excuse to bully anyone. Bullying is a disgusting thing, and there need to be repercussions for the actions of the bullies. After listening to the prior meetings, it became abundantly clear that the major problem lies within the faculty and the staff at the schools. Many children reported their terrible experiences as evidence from prior students, and no action was taken. How is that even possible? Before we start asking our dear children these deeply personal questions, we should start at the root of the problem, which seems there's no one at the school even holding the bullies accountable. I don't believe sending out the survey to our children will provide the problem solving that needs to happen. We need to start looking at the leaders and how they are handling the problems that happen in our school. We love our town dearly and have loved living in Reading, but the survey is pulling our little town apart and pitting neighbor against neighbor. And this is not the purpose of this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Next, I see Robert Santangeli.
Thank you. 55 Honeysuckle in Easton. I also sent a letter. I oppose the survey, agree with many of the comments, but I will just try not to repeat anything and just add a couple of things. One, I think we should all dispatch with this. I'm sorry, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
I think we should all dispatch with this claim that this somehow addresses bullying. The bullying is addressed in the school climate survey, which gives the children an opportunity to state what their bullying is and to share their actual experience, which is much more valid than these leading questions of what's your race, what's your sexuality, do you feel that you've been treated unfairly? So the idea that this somehow provides something different then the school climate survey is untrue. This is mining, it's digging, it's teaching, it's intended to teach children about these terms and just bring it into their dialogue at a young age. With that said, as I've mentioned, no one argues with what anyone wants to teach their children at home. The values that you want to teach your kid, I think most of us have people of different orientation, different genders or different races in their families. This is not about that. This is about what's okay to teach our children in public school. The only thing I would also like to add, in addition to that, this does nothing, we're already taking care of the bullying through the school climate survey, is that this opt-out, which, I did receive a reply to my email about the opt-out, and we all understand opt-out. No one's forcing our kids yet to take this survey. But what it does is it invalidates the results. If you can opt out, and most of us will, you're getting one viewpoint, and that's what you're going to frame or create your policy based on. And I think perhaps that's the intent, to do that. But it's unfair to the rest of the community. The bullying is addressed in the school climate survey. This adds nothing. It's divisive. People are encouraged. All of us can have these conversations at home.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, I see Jack Bebon.
Hi, Jack Bebon, Blackrock Turnpike in Easton, Connecticut. I just want to clarify that it's not opt-out, it is opt-in, which means that you have to say that you want to take the survey. The survey is not going to be automatically sent to you. That's different than an opt-out system. Furthermore, a lot of kids in elementary and middle school are calling each other terms and guessing each other's orientations anyways. You have like elementary and middle school, like boyfriend and girlfriends growing up. Like kids come up to me all the time in like 4th grade, ask me if I'm gay, ask me if I'm an F slur, call me an F slur. This stuff is already being talked about. And it's not like the Board of Ed is going to use this information to be like, oh, that person's gay, because it's all anonymous and confidential. So they're not trying to like make you label anything. And I don't know what kind of agenda is being pushed, because everything is offered straight. I don't know. I'm not familiar. Everything's being offered. So it's not pushing any sort of particular agenda. It's just making sure that everybody is there and represented, which I see no problem with, especially because of the fact that kids are already asking each other these questions. They may not know specific terms until later on, because everybody learns things at different rates, but a lot of them will. And if they don't, if you sit it down and explain it to them, they'll probably know what you're talking about, because things are literally everywhere. It's the world, and you see all different kinds of things, and it needs to be included and talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Next, I see Mary Beth Belfato.
Hi, how are you? Mary Beth Belfato. I live on Portland Ave in Reading. I would just like to voice that I would like to delay the survey for a little bit. There's basically everybody said every point that I wanted to make, that the school climate survey should be addressing bullying. And if bullying is taking place, then somebody in the school system is not taking care of that in the school system. The other point that I wanted to bring up was that if the majority of the parents are going to opt, whatever the young man just said before, if you opt out or you don't opt in, then your data is going to be skewed. And I was trying to think about this from my son's perspective, who's in 6th grade. And I think that, you guys had 500 people sign, what was it you had them sign? You had 500 signatures to push through this, DEI survey. And, I'm wondering about that. Are those people from schools from years past, or are they current students, or are they adults? Like, I'm just wondering, who are those people? Because my son has been, he's in 6th grade, and he's much more open and accepting of all people, black, white, gay, straight. We have gay cousins. We have lesbians in our family. So I think that the younger kids are much more open-minded. And if that 500 signatures that you got were from people from past, school years or past generations, they maybe would have been dealing with a different mindset. Whereas like now the kids are much more open and accepting of things. So that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to say, I think we should delay the survey until we can all kind of sit down and figure out what the main goal of this is.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Next, I see Brian, followed by Julianne Licamelli.
Hi there, turn my video on. I'll keep this short. I oppose the survey for many of the reasons.
Your full name, street, and town, please.
Sorry, 70 Acre in Reading.
And that's Brian, your last name?
Matsky.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, short and sweet. We oppose the survey. I think the kids are, the kids are too young. I don't even know if they'll understand many of the terms that are, mentioned in this. There's also questions about religion, income, politics. I just think it's inappropriate. If anything, I do, if this is going to go forward in any way, shape, or form, I suggest that there's more time that's put into this, and there's more involvement from the communities. I feel like I just heard about this literally, 30 days ago, and now we're where we are. So at worst, it should be delayed and there should be more discussion. But from what I see, I read the survey, we oppose it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Brian. Julianne?
Hi, Julianne McAmelly on 18 Walsall Road in Easton. So I just want to remind the board why we created this survey in the first place. It is for marginalized populations. It is for everyone, but specifically we're trying to acknowledge and uplift marginalized populations. And those populations in our town are not the majority. So there's no way that you're going to get a letter, even if every single one of them wrote, that is the majority. And so because of that, since these are the populations we're trying to protect and listen to, we might need to uplift their voices in this conversation a little bit more. Just because it's impossible for them to dominate this conversation because they're not the majority. And so I hope the board will remember and listen to that, and remember that some voices are carrying a little bit more weight because it's a matter of their safety. And then secondly, I would say that a lot of people are bringing up bullying. And yes, bullying is an issue individually. However, we're talking about being bullied or harassed or discriminated against because of a certain identity. And that cannot be measured just by asking someone if they're bullied. It has to be measured in a much more thoughtful way that is sensitive to people's experiences and identities. And I think this survey does that. And so everybody talking about bullying, just remember the fact that people are being bullied because of their sexuality, because of their race, because of all these different factors that we've identified. And we know this because people tell us this. And so to honestly ignore that is irresponsible, which is why we're here today. So we need to remember those two factors, and I support the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Next, I see Stephanie Christie. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi. So I've gotten a little bit more
Street and town, please.
Can you, oh, sorry, 11 Austin Drive Extension. So I've gotten a little bit more familiar with these conversations in the last couple weeks. Number one, I think that some of these parents that are concerned are rightfully unfamiliar with the results of the past surveys because past administrations and boards have not been forthcoming and sharing that information, both the survey results where they're open-ended questions as well as just the general results. And that's leading to this. So hopefully you will make a concerted effort to make that information publicly available on an ongoing basis and really educating around that. Two, we have those open-ended survey results for I think that they should be publicly available so that people can review them and they can see the brevity of some of those comments, but also the clarity of what people's experiences are and why they do not feel that they can speak out. Two, I do think some of the people are correct in saying that the younger generation is more accepting, but that does not negate the isolation that some of those children are experiencing. They may not be being actively bullied, but they are still being isolated, and it is not a fully inclusive experience. And there should be some more action on the part of the administration, which is the goal of this activity, to help bring the community together so that those children have a better experience. The whole goal here is not to out people, or in the sense of let's all know what everyone's sexual orientation is. It is to make sure that our educators and our administrators are well trained to be able to identify what's going on in school, who's feeling marginalized, that there are a portion, because you just by default know that they're there, and then have them have the training so that they're able to do their jobs better, so that our kids all feel comfortable there. That's it. And I would lastly like to say that I know
you're
that
over
you're
2
trying
minutes, Stephanie, if you could wrap
okay,
up very
bye.
quickly.
Cut it.
Okay.
That's all right.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, I see RJ Bolito.
Remember your name?
Yes, sorry, Maureen Hanley, Andrews Road. I don't know why the video is not showing up and it has my son's name on it. But I've been getting a lot of curriculum sent to me from parents, especially in regarding the 10th grade wellness classes. I love how it's called wellness classes, when some of the definitions are glossary terms are anal sex and fetishes in 10th grade. Is that what our sexual education has devolved to? And when it comes to DEI, my major concerns is how would that be implemented? If we have glossary terms like that, if we have intrusive surveys going out to 10th graders, how is this curriculum going to be developed? We have FOI requests out to the superintendent's office that has been ignored. Parents have a right to know what our children are being taught. I work 2 jobs and 7 days a week, and I shouldn't have to worry about what my daughter's being taught in school. And in regards to the thoughtful comments from some of our younger residents here, I would say bullying happens to a lot of people. It happened to me. It happened to all of my 3 children. I was the fat kid in school. And I'm sorry for getting on late. I just want to mention this. But when you log into ER9, it said the meeting was canceled. Now, I understand now that that was a different meeting regarding Easton, but I wonder how many people didn't log in tonight that didn't dig deep and find out that it wasn't this meeting that was canceled. It was another Easton Board of Ed meeting that was canceled. So that was incredibly misleading to our residents who have been driven to this meeting tonight. I'm against this. I urge all of you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Next is Carolyn Oppenheim, and as a time check, it is now 7:15, and public comment is scheduled to end at 7:22. Carolyn, go ahead.
Hi, Carolyn Oppenheim, Hunting Ridge Road. I am very much in favor of using the DEI survey. I think there are very marginalized groups. It's very interesting to hear that people believe. I think that in general, there are a lot more kids who are accepting in the younger grades. However, my son is in 7th grade and experienced a great deal of bullying around his sexuality, not just from younger kids, but from high schoolers when he was in 6th grade. And so it's not widespread known what all of these terms mean. That is correct. Sometimes we have to show kids what things mean so that they understand it a little bit better, so that they can be more accepting, because the only thing that happens when you hide things like this from our kids is that they develop fear. And the fear is where we get into trouble with a lot of these children. People are scared because they think it's catching or it's the number of children who said they couldn't get near my son because they thought they would catch it. And in 6th or 7th grade, they need more and better education. They're not getting it at home. I wish they were. It is not fair to those marginalized kids. And you're talking about kids who commit suicide at a super high rate. And I think we need to really address in the schools how they're treated amongst their peers, and how their peers react to them. Thank you.
Carolyn, are you Easton or Reading?
I apologize. 25 Hunting Ridge Road, Reading, Easton. Sorry, I'm just going to say all the names. Hunting Ridge Road in Easton.
Thank you, Carolyn. Next, I see Claire.
Hi,
Claire, go ahead.
Claire. It's Claire Matsky from 33 70 Acre Road. I just want to express my opinion that I think that this issue should be delayed. I think the community in general at large needs a little bit more time to wrap their heads around this issue. I'm sure we no longer have children in the school system, so I think I probably represent a group of residents that is not hearing this information on a daily basis. It's not being discussed, in our circle of friends or anything like that. So, to see this survey and to see the questions that are being asked, predominantly of middle schoolers who, they're being asked to check a box about their sexual orientation or their sexual identity. Many of these children may not even know what that is. And they may never question this if, it was independent of this survey. I understand that it's opt-in, not opt-out. I don't even know how that happens, actually. I just think that this is really asking young children questions that they are not prepared to answer. And I did want to say, even the questions about the disability, when I was looking at that section and putting myself in the mind of a middle schooler, saying, do I have dyslexia, dyscalculia? I can't even say that. Do I have moderate learning difficulty? Do I have multiple disabilities? Do I have profound you're asking a middle schooler to check a box about their disability status. I also feel that
2
question
minutes, if you could wrap up, please.
Unnecessary as well. So I would vote to delay this until the general population at large can really wrap their heads around it.
Thank you, Claire. That brings us to Kevin Oliver. And when Kevin is concluded, we'll be at 7:22, which will conclude public comment absent a motion from the boards to extend it. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, yes. Just want to real quick, there's been a lot of really good comments made. Lilac Lane in Easton, I apologize. And I just want to point out a couple of things. I think if you ask a general question, if anybody is for inclusivity and diversity and understanding in our schools and even in our society, it's a very simple and resounding yes. I think a lot of this needs to be cleaned up and cleared up for the public. It seems like, a number of factions involved have danced around this. When they bring out a survey and people say, whoa, wait a minute, I'm not comfortable with this. Oh, well, let's go back and rewrite it. And then you come back and say, well, we're still not really comfortable with this and that. There's people on the board that aren't comfortable with it. Oh, well, wait a minute, we'll go back and rewrite it again. And then the public starts to learn about it and say, hey, we're not sure about this. And, we want to question it. Oh, well, wait, we got 500 signatures, but wait a minute. The 500 signatures weren't about the survey. The 500 signatures were about a 52-page manifesto from a group called the Social Justice Group. Do they have anything to do with the board? Well, no, we never met with them. Oh, wait a minute. We had some conversations with them, but we never really officially met with them. So I hope you get my point that I think what you're probably doing is pushing something that maybe people have a lot of questions about and you should slow down. The last thing that I'll say is that I think we have the most important survey that, at least to my middle schooler, that is most important to me this year after a completely disruptive and horrible year. And that survey was the test results that came back and showed that our children are doing horribly academically. And that's where the board and everybody should be focusing their time on. That survey has been done. They came back as a miserable failure. And that's what we need to work on first. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, 40 minutes having elapsed, that concludes public comment. I would look for a motion from the board to extend it. And if I do not hear such a motion, we will move on. Devin,
I'll make a motion to extend by 10 minutes for these 3 public comments.
there's a motion in Easton to extend the commenting period by 10 minutes. Is there a second?
Randy raised his hand.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second Devin's then.
Say motion in Reading, anybody?
I'll make the motion in Reading.
Mike, second. Heather, Region 9.
And same motion, Region 9.
Second.
Sorry, couldn't hear. Was that Karen?
Is Maureen.
Sorry.
Maureen, thank you.
I'll second Karen.
And Karen, second. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the motion or any cause for discussion?
I was
Hearing
kind of
no-
curious to see what would happen if one of the boards said no.
Don't try me. Hearing no objection, the comment period is extended till 7:33 p.m. And the next commenter is JS. Go ahead, please. JS.
Hey guys, sorry. Yeah, I agree with what Kevin was saying,
Can you-
and I'm going
na-
to keep it short because I think
Name and street, please.
honestly, I think you guys, I think the board should be focusing on academics, and instead of having kids, feel like they're victimized or nobody wants to isolate kids or have kids feel like they're not included. But I think the schools should focus on academics and actually teach the kids to be resilient because they're going to need to compete on a global scale. All right. And, with the last year and academic suffering, I think there's a lot of work to be done in that regard. All right. Kids should be taught math and science. And I believe that should be the focus. I think there needs to be more information about the survey. I'd certainly like to get a little bit more info about it. I think we should delay it so that, the whole community can feel like they're well informed, which I don't think we are. Thank you.
Name, street, and town, please. Next is, I'm going to butcher this, Ronnie, I apologize.
Ronnie is right. Thank you. Ronnie Menon, Stone's Throw Road. I'm in complete support of the DI survey. It really concerns me that people are so opposed to making sure that the survey does not come out or have a tactic to delay it. This survey has been really thought out by all the people who have put it out. They've put so many hours into it, and they have been very transparent all the way along. The parents that are so opposed to this survey should really be more comfortable talking about these subjects with their children, because if they think their children are not talking about all of these things right now with their peers, they're really mistaken. Unfortunately, these children of the marginalized communities that we are talking about, they are not consistently recognized by all of us. They themselves have come forward talking about their struggles and how there's no resources or support for them. We need to listen to them. Their voices are more important than any fear that we may fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see Paul Zielinski. Paul.
Yeah, hi, Paul Zielinski, 73 Giles Hill Road in Reading. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that people said that I agree with about why the survey is a bad idea. I just want to make 2 quick points. One is, the only thing I can say is that most of the people I've heard that have commented tonight must be really bad at statistics, because everyone knows that a self-selecting survey really has no statistical validity whatsoever. And I could just see, 6-8 months from now, headlines, 90% of Reading students say they are marginalized or bullied because, 300 kids out of how many are in the whole system decided to participate in the survey. So I think the results of the survey will have absolutely no use. We don't have children in the school system anymore, but as a taxpayer, I really don't like the school board wasting my taxpayer dollars. And the last thing, just repeating what a previous person said about school performance and other comments about bullying. I think really the board should be focused on really going to the teachers union and working with them to try and have the teachers and the unions stop standing in the way of student performance and students having better outcomes. I think your focus is totally misguided, and I think you're really doing a bad disservice for both the students and the taxpayers in this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next, Eric and Tracy Darmafel.
That was a good one, honey.
Hi, Tracy Darmafal, 9 Archers Lane, Reading. We have 3 kids in the school, one at Barlow, one at JRMS, and one at RES. And I understand a lot of parents don't want this survey to be done. I'm in fully support of it. And if there are sections you want your kids to skip over because you're not comfortable with it, that's fine. However, there might be one kid out there who needs to have his voice be heard. And that kid needs to let his voice be heard. And everyone's going, no, 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 no. You need to step back and realize our kids are hearing and seeing and they've been exposed to LGBTQ, racism, disabilities. Hi, I work with adults with disabilities. Anybody on here who thinks their kids haven't gone over disabilities, you need to maybe be questioning things. There's movies, TV shows, music, books, magazines, social media, school clubs, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, Instagram. I can keep going on and on. Your children have been exposed. They need their voices to be heard. It might not be able to be heard in their own household, but it needs to be heard. And everybody's sitting here questioning the academics. Our children's mental health is a problem right now. Huge. Red flags everywhere. Academics are going to drop when mental health drops. And I think this is something that everybody needs to recognize. School bullying is a problem. And if we work together as a community to get the information we need, we can move forward. So as adults, we can step back and educate our kids, ourselves and our kids as a community. It's a village to help our kids to be academically successful and mentally health successfully. And this survey, I think, definitely needs to happen. If you're not comfortable with aspects of it, skip over it, and that's fine. But also realize that your kids have been exposed to a lot of this, if not all of it. And we're making a much bigger deal out of it than it really should be made out of. So thank you to the board. I fully support this.
Thank you, Tracy. Next, I see R. Nelson. R. Nelson.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? All right. Sorry. Laura Nelson, 3 Deer Hill Road in Reading. I'm not going to repeat what I've already, sent emails over to you all. So again, thank you for some of your responses. But now my main concern is exactly what I'm hearing for these last 4 or 5 comments from parents. And this it's really driving the home point of why this type of survey shouldn't happen, because now I'm listening to comments from parents telling me that I should, wake up and it's on TikTok. That's very unfair, because as people that oppose the survey are trying to give you reasons on why they think it isn't appropriate, but never did they attack the parenting of other kids. And that's where I feel you will definitely now, from these past 2 comments, will create more of a divide. Because now 2 comments ago, some woman just basically said that I have to wake up and realize that this is happening. Nobody knows what goes on at anybody else's home. And yes, mental health illness is always a concern of everybody's, but it is not parents that live on my street or parents that live in the town that are going to tell me how to work with my child for mental illness. So I really believe that this was an open discussion and not to take stabs at people. And this is exactly why this survey shouldn't happen, is exactly those 2 comments that were just said. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next, I see Pamela Caroluzzi.
Sorry, Chris. Hi, hi, Chris. I have to get back to the opt-out proportion discussion. I'm really happy that my child and son-in-law feel free to let their sixth grade child opt out for whatever the reason is, but there have to be some parents and some children, which has happened with my sixth grader. Why did you opt out? That's my business. And it really makes me crazy that people are afraid to opt out for whatever the reason, because they're afraid to speak up. But I'm really happy that my kids in Reading are doing their justice. And I'm sorry it's come to this. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Pam. The time being now 7:33, that is the end of the extended public comment period. Barring any further motions, and seeing no further motions, at this time, we will move on to item number 3 of the agenda, which is the DEI surveys. And I will turn it over to the chair of the DEI task force, Heather Whaley, and the administration to take it from here.
Thank you, Chris. So I want to give a little bit of background for people about the process. The task force on diversity, equity, and inclusion consists of myself, board members John Riley, Gretchen Goldstein, Devin Weibel, Cheryl Graziano, Juliette Berry, the Director of Curriculum and Development, Dr. Stephanie Pearson-Ugal, board chairs Todd Johnston, Chris Parkin, and John Stinson, as well as Superintendent Dr. Rydell Harrison. Also 2 community members from each Easton and Reading, a certified staff member from each school, middle and high school students. We met in February to determine the best way to take step 1 of the approved charge of the committee, which is to assess our strengths and identify areas for improvement. At that time, it was determined that a survey of students, staff, and families would allow lived experiences to help focus next steps in terms of recommendations for professional development and potential focus groups in the future.
Blah, blah, blah.
I'm sorry. I just got to say that was rude.
I got it.
Thanks. So a working group was convened, which included 2 Board of Education members, a student representative, and 2 members of the community, including one with over 25 years of experience in writing, tabulating, and analyzing survey data within the pharmaceutical industry. This group drafted surveys and presented them to the task force at the March meeting, during which committee members offered comments and suggested edits. The meeting was then paused to allow for comments and suggestions from the public. The working group used this information to revise the surveys and brought them back to the task force at the April meeting, at which time further edits were made based on additional input from committee members and the public. These surveys were then voted on and approved by the task force. The surveys were then offered to all the boards of education for additional comments and suggestions. All Board of Education members in Easton, Reading, and Region 9 were encouraged to attend the May meeting of the task force or to submit questions, comments, or suggestions in writing. The May meeting was attended by the aforementioned board members on the task force, as well as Randy Hicks, newly named task force member Jenny Cheetah, and suggestions were received from Chris Hawker and Colleen Pilato. Those comments and suggestions were incorporated into new drafts of the survey, which were then again submitted to the task force, who then approved the revised draft. So that's the amount of work and revision and opportunity for comment and that people have had to put into this. This has been months. And now, since the collection of data will be done by the school in the same way that the climate surveys are done, I'm going to hand it over to Drs. Pearson-Ugal and Harrison to discuss next steps and offer some clarifying questions and answers.
Thank you, Heather. Good evening, everyone. I just want to take a few minutes and talk about the DEI surveys. And as Heather mentioned, talk about, to try to clarify a couple of questions that we've heard and talk about next steps as well. So I want to start with just talking about the goal and the purpose of the survey. The goal of the DEI surveys is to gain a deeper understanding of the educational experiences of our middle and our high school students. Our goal here is to use this data to really inform our goals and provide a baseline to measure our progress with relationship to our work around race and ethnicity, physical and mental ableness, sexual orientation, political diversity, religion, gender, social isolation, and exclusion. And specifically when I'm talking about measuring progress, we're really looking at the extent to which our students feel safe, included, represented in our schools. I know that there's been a lot of talk already tonight about experiences with bullying, and that is definitely addressing bullying is definitely a function of our administrators and an important piece of our work. What makes this a little bit different is that we're not just talking about bullying, because the absence of bullying is not inclusion. You can be non-bullied and still not feel fully included in your school. And that's really the more nuanced stories that we're trying to listen for and pull from this data, specifically around social isolation and exclusion. Those are, this will really give us an opportunity to get a better picture of our students' experiences and to give them an opportunity to share with us in ways that will help us to support them going forward. As Heather mentioned, we talked about kind of this timeline around where we've been with this work with respect to the DEI surveys. And our goal is to survey our students prior to the end of the school year so that we have the summer to really work on analyzing that data, developing a theory of action. That work would be analyzed, you could see end of June going into July 2021. That work would be analyzed by our Safe School Climate Committee of administrators that represent all 5 of our schools, as well as our central office staff who would have access to that data. Following the analysis of that, our Safe Schools Climate Committee would work on developing a draft theory of action that we would then bring back to the DEI committee to say, here's what the data show about what's happening in our schools. Here are some thoughts around putting together some plans going forward in order to make sure that we are supporting our students at the level that we know is most important for them. But prior to that work happening, you see that the surveys would be sent to all students, staff, and families via email in order to review the survey questions, give all of our families the option to opt their students into the survey, and then email the survey links to our staff and our families in order to give them an opportunity to respond.
Okay, I'm going to spend a few minutes explaining the exact process of the survey administration. As a number of people have noted, this is opt-in only. This is an opt-in, not an opt-out survey. So what that means is that parents will receive an email with an explanation of the survey and then the full survey to review. Only after the parent logs into PowerSchool and provides active consent by checking a box that the parent gives permission for the student to participate in any part of the survey, will the survey link then be sent to students in middle school and high school. Parents and staff will also receive an email with a different link to the parent survey and to and staff will receive, of course, the link to the staff survey, and that's completely optional. Data privacy is something that we take extremely seriously as a school organization. Data privacy is governed by Connecticut Public Act 16-189. So what that means in plain speak is that Easton, Reading, and Region 9 owns all of the respondent data. Surveys will not collect IP addresses from the respondents, and there is no identifying information contained in the survey. If any of the open-ended questions contain information that might lead to the ability for anyone to identify, that will be redacted by central office administration before any of the survey data is analyzed by the larger school climate, the district school climate committee that has more administrators on it. ER9 further may not sell, transfer, or use the data for anything other than school purposes.
So just as far as how the data will be analyzed, the plan is to use SurveyMonkey to administer the survey. This is a familiar format to our students, our families, and our staff. We use SurveyMonkey often for surveys. SurveyMonkey will also be used to cross-reference information provided to provide the data by subgroup and by subtopic. This really gives us an opportunity to see how students are experiencing school on a daily basis based on the subgroup that they identify with in the survey. That will allow the analysis by the Safe School Climate Committee to really dig deep into understanding, get a better picture of the lived experiences of our students and as well as those of their families and our staff as well, and what they're seeing to be able to triangulate that data. That data will be analyzed by the Climate Committee, which includes our building administrators, the superintendent, and our assistant superintendent for curriculum and development. We've heard a lot of questions about data reliability. So how can we ensure that the data is usable when students and teachers and our families have the opportunity to not participate in the survey or not to opt in? So really the survey, as I mentioned, is designed to lift out the lived experiences of our students, staff, and families. So it's not to identify a statistically significant number or a majority. So there's nothing that says that we're looking for a threshold, right? Where we're saying at least 20% of all students who respond have to respond this way in order for us to take action or to develop a plan or to take another look at our policies or our practices. And so this is really just about getting a picture of where students are. Another way to look at this, at the survey is oftentimes when districts are doing this work or trying to gather experiences of what's happening in our schools, they'll use focus groups. And so with the focus group, you know that you're not going to have a majority of students participating in focus groups. You're really just trying to get a broad picture. And so really that's what this survey is designed to do as well. And so that's why we're not looking for a number threshold in order to make sense of the data going forward. It's important also to note that that we're not using this or analyzing this data in isolation, that we'll also be looking at our climate surveys that our students take annually. We'll be looking at some of the data that was collected and will be shared out from some high school focus groups, and then also look at our assessment data, our class enrollment, our disciplinary data, and then any other qualitative or quantitative data that's available to us. From there, we look at all of those pieces of data together, and then through our theory of action, identify strengths and opportunities to be able to set goals for ourselves and for the district in order to make sure that we are able to meet the needs of our students in the most effective way going forward. The ultimate goal of the survey, as we mentioned, it's just in thinking about what happens next, is to really dig in and look at what are some things that we need to do in order to improve the academic outcomes for every one of our students. We know that students' feelings of inclusiveness, that their social and emotional well-being, that their ability to feel represented and supported in classes have a direct impact on academic outcomes. And so we will be looking at what does this data show us? Are there things that we need to reconsider? Are there additional supports that we may need to put in place? Or are there some practices that we currently have in place that are not yielding the intended outcomes? This gives us an opportunity to look at what professional development needs we might have for our school leaders and all of our staff. gives us opportunities to look at some coaching and support opportunities for leaders and our faculty. And then, as I mentioned before, reviewing of existing policies. What's important to note that's not here is that we will not use these surveys in order to make curriculum decisions. That's not how the curriculum development process works. It is important as we are working on our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across all 3 districts, looking at all of our practices, all of our materials and our resources, that we are looking at the ways in which our curriculum is, we will be looking at the ways in which our curriculum supports our intended outcomes, but that is not directly aligned to this curriculum, to this survey. That's for people who spend all of their time and energy, like Dr. Pearson-Ugal, focused on curriculum development and the curriculum work across the district. It's not been our practice, and nor will it be our practice going forward, that we use just student surveys to then suddenly, kind of go out and purchase a curriculum. That the curriculum development process happens also in public meetings with lots of opportunities for input from our families, from our community members, from our board, and that's a separate conversation from this one that we're having in relationship to student climate and these DEI surveys. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Mr. Parkin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Harrison. What I want to do next is take clarifying questions from board members with respect to that presentation and the topic generally. And before I do that, I just want to note that it is 7:50 p.m. And if you're joining us for our regularly scheduled Reading Board of Education meeting, that meeting will follow this meeting whenever we conclude, but will be substantially streamlined and focused on the action items on the agenda set forth for that meeting. That being said, if there are any questions for the administration or Heather with respect to that presentation, we could take them now. And why don't we start in Easton?
Do I have any questions in Easton? Yes, Jeff.
So am I to understand that there's no be no further discussion about changing any of the questions or any of the wording within those questions?
No, I don't think that's the intent. I think the intent is to focus questions right now on sort of the presentation we just got and the topics just discussed. I think once we have a motion on the table, certainly discussion and possible action on that, we'll come to that.
For right now, it's any questions to clarify what Dr. Harris and Dr. Pearson-Ugal and so just walked us through.
So if there's any confusion about what was just covered, we want to make sure that we clear that up first.
Okay.
Jen, and I have a quick, very simplistic one. I think I'm not very familiar with the survey applications, be it Google Forms or Docs or whatever, or SurveyMonkey. But let's say a family has 3 children in high school. How will SurveyMonkey know that they're to fill out the high school survey 3 times, let's say?
They'll know because each high school student, if the parent provides consent for each of the 3 students, the students will receive the link to the survey in the student's ER9 email.
So they get it to their individual ER9 email address. That's how they'll know, as long as the parent has said, yes, you have permission to take this.
The parents must provide consent first, but after they provide consent for each student would then receive a link.
I think what Randy's asking is what stops you from clicking the link 3 times and filling it out 3 times?
That was going to be my follow-up question, but thank you, Chris.
The SurveyMonkey has a number of mechanisms to prevent that from happening. I don't know how deep you want to go on that.
No, that's good. That's fine. Okay, so this initial question goes to the parents, and then the parents say yes, and then the survey goes to the child's email. Okay.
Right.
Sorry, can I just clarify that was to the child's email in high school? not in the middle school?
No,
is
in
that the
middle
same?
school and high school. After the parent provides active consent, then the link would go to the student's email.
Thank you.
Other clarifying questions, Easton? If there aren't any clarifying questions, Reading?
I'm sorry, I'm just
Go ahead,
realizing,
Stephanie.
I don't think it was absolutely clear that once the link to the survey, if the parent provides consent and the link is sent to the students, they may take the survey at their leisure at home. So
Right.
there'll be a certain time period to complete the survey, but the surveys there will not be taken at school. So there's no given time that, say, advisory classes will have DEI survey completion on their schedule.
Chris?
We don't really know where the student's going to take the survey.
We do not, but what I'm saying is we're not carving out time at school.
Okay, yeah, okay,
And
yeah,
could-
I assume that, okay.
Could we sequence it so that when the surveys actually go out, that they're going out in the evening to sort of maximize the opportunity for parents to be involved in that? You know, you don't want a student getting it sort of in the middle of the school day and somehow opening it up on their phone or something.
We could.
Yeah. Okay.
Chris?
Yeah, and I realize that this question may not have a great answer in advance, but we have no idea the level of participation that we're going to get back, right? So, you know, we could have 10 responses and we could have 500 responses. Have you thought about how you would integrate, depending on the participation rate, how you would integrate that into sort of the overall picture of what you do with this data? Because clearly, if you have a very small number of respondents, I would think you would take that into account differently than if you had a very large number of respondents.
So Chris, I can answer that. I mean, so yes, I mean, I think that the number of respondents is going to be important as we are analyzing the data. I think that it's part of the reason why we talked about analyzing this data in collaboration with the survey data, with the climate survey data, where our numbers, our participation rate is much higher than what we would get in an opt-in survey. I think that what I know about how our students have responded in previous surveys is that they are forthcoming with information and this has been really consistent with what I saw in the 2019 surveys, but also just consistent with what I've seen just in working with students. Just in general, if you ask them questions, they'll answer you. And so I expect that some of the open-ended questions will give us a lot of really good information that would help us to get a better picture of what many of our students are experiencing, even if it's not a high number of students who are filling out the surveys.
Other questions, Reading? All right, Region 9.
Mike, go ahead.
All right, so thank you for that presentation, Dr. Harrison. I just had one question, and I think it's important to clarify. On that timeline slide that you had up, it had DEI committee, and I wonder if you could talk whether DEI committee means DEI task force or DEI committee means DEI committee of the school, just so that everybody clearly understands the difference and which one you were speaking to.
Sorry, Mike, I was just going back to the
On the
slide
timeline one, I think.
here. While I'm answering that, I'm gonna just share my screen again. So Mike, tell me where,
We're under implement DEI plan, it says.
oh, I see. Yeah, so that would be providing updates, that administration would be providing updates to the DEI task force.
Okay, so that's the task force. Okay.
Yes.
Because just not to confuse everyone, but there's also a DEI committee at the high school. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear.
Even clearer now.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I think I saw Karen's hand as well for Region 9.
Yeah, I would just like to say I really appreciated the presentation tonight. That helped to clarify a lot of questions that I had, and I'm sure questions that the parents had. I think it laid out how easy it is that you actually have to give your consent before your child even takes the survey. So I think, truthfully, this would have been helpful a meeting or two ago, so that would have alleviated a lot of this angst and unfortunate divisiveness. So I would just like to say that I hope this has helped other people in the public as much as I have gotten information from it. Thank you.
All right, other in Region 9. Maureen.
Mine is just a clarifying question on Chris Hocker's question, which I thought was very thoughtful and was what was in my mind. Is there a threshold below which you would not regard the responses to this survey as significant enough to take action on? And I don't know if you can answer that, but say for argument's sake, you got 10 responses. Would you consider that, sort of a valid representative sample? Or is there a number that you really feel like you need in order to feel like it's representative and actionable data?
So that's a great question. I'm going to try not to slip into too much jargon as I'm answering it, because so my background as a researcher is as a qualitative researcher. And so surveys are typically seen as quantitative research tools. All along, my thinking with this has been using a quantitative tool to qualitatively. And so with a qualitative survey, it is, or with a qualitative study, for instance, you are not looking at a critical mass. So there's no kind of percent of participation that we're looking for, which is why we use the term, we're really trying to get a picture of the lived experiences of our students. So if 10 students respond and they say, and these 10 students say that, that their experiences in the hallways in middle school are difficult, specifically with relationship to their religious identity, then that's 10 students, that's enough for us to dig a little bit deeper and say, are there things that we need to put in place to support our students with respect to their religious identity? If 6 students say that that during the course of the school year, that because of their political affiliation, they felt like it was uncomfortable to share their thoughts and opinions in class, that's 6 too many, right? So that would be enough for us to say let's take action. Now, in none of these responses is the taking action part of it so drastic that it means that everything changes, right? It really is just talking about, for us, in thinking about what happens in our schools on a daily basis, what signals are we sending, either purposefully or unconsciously, to make students to feel uncomfortable or connected or included. And I think that, in talking with, had a really great conversation a couple of months ago with one of our community members who was just saying, when it comes to the population of LGBT people in the broader society, it might be a low percentage. So we can expect that number to be low in our schools as well. And I said, I agree. How many would you be comfortable with? How many are we comfortable with of not feeling good about coming to school every day? And the answer to that is 0. And so that's why we're not looking for a threshold here of a number. We're just really looking at what are our students' experiences and how do we support them in a meaningful way.
I just have a follow-up comment. So then,
can I add one more thing to that, Maureen, before you
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So the taking action might also be the intent to gather more information, maybe even by observing. So if a number of students say in this particular area of the school, I don't feel comfortable. We see that sometimes in the climate surveys. A logical next step would be, let's take a look at those areas. Do we have appropriate supervision, or is the discomfort, are there things that we're posting that make some kids not feel represented or not included? So let's spend some time this summer taking a look at those areas and raising some questions for further explanation. That it's not necessarily that the action is intended to be a fix, but it might be a set of questions to follow up.
So then in some sense that the term survey is somewhat of a misnomer here, because really what you're doing is you're providing a safe space for students to express a set of opinions that you can then use to create a safer space still for them. So somehow the focus here has been on survey, as if we're mass collecting data. And we are collecting data, but really what we're doing is we're providing a vehicle for those who don't have a voice to find a way to have one. Anyway, that was more of a comment than a question, but thank you for your thoughtful responses, both Dr. Harrison and Dr. Pearson.
Any others in Region 9? I do have a question. Sorry, Jeff, we're still in Region 9.
Yeah, keeping in Region 9, we can swing back.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do appreciate the task force making a lot of changes to the surveys last week and getting them back out to board members the latter part of the week. My question is, did the surveys go to, all of them go to our attorneys to review? And the reason being, I have some concerns about us asking questions in the, like the staff survey, asking our employees, the staff, if they have any disabilities or learning difficulties. And even though this is still an opt-in, they still have concerns about asking our employees these types of questions without having this had outside counsel review. And if there's any disclaimers or anything like that, we need to put on the surveys before they go out, or any other questions we might need to modify before this goes out. So my question is, has this gone to legal counsel for the boards to review?
It did, yes. The surveys in their first draft form were reviewed.
Not first draft, it's been reviewed, it's been modified last week. So these most recent versions.
Let's let her finish the response.
Yes, so the council provided a response that included a number of references for what we may and may not ask in any type of survey. And so we followed that guidance. And so the next revisions were also in keeping with the guidance that we received from council.
But this version did not go to council.
They did not review the specific version. They reviewed the first version and then gave us guidance with the types of questions that we can ask and can't ask, and rules specifically around not collecting student information or staff information.
All right, thank you.
Other clarifying questions from Region 9?
Marilee.
I'm just wondering if we can give notification to parents who do opt in to have their children take the survey as to when it's going to go out, so that if they want to go over the questions with their children, they can do that. That way, we will get the greatest number of responses. And if they decide that they don't want their children to answer a certain question, then they can go through it with them and just say, you know what, we're going to skip this. They can handle it however the parent wants to handle it, but just so we can get the greatest participation and have the most comfort level with answering as many of the questions as we can.
All right, any other questions, Regina? All right, give it back to you, Chris.
Was that answer? Did someone answer Mary Lee? I missed it.
No,
I'm sorry, I was nodding along. So Mary,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I saw nods.
I'm looking down.
Sorry about
that.
Yes.
Okay.
the answer to your question is absolutely that we'll send that information home to families once everything is approved and we have kind of a timeline for getting all that information out. That we will be really diligent about communicating, making our communication abundantly clear, and providing lots of options.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Swing around for any other clarifying questions. I thought I saw Jenny and Jeff at a point too. Jenny, go ahead.
Mine was just, is the parent layer of opt-in also there for high school, or was that only for the middle school students?
It's for
both middle and high.
Okay. And then is it possible for someone to do a quick email out to the board of the presentation that you just gave? That slide deck?
Sure. Give me 30 seconds.
Jeff, do you want to tee up your question?
Sorry, do I?
Ask your question while
Okay,
Dr. Harrison
yeah.
is sharing?
Yes. Stephanie, how does the way that you're going to approach reviewing this survey differ from how you've reviewed the climate and the culture surveys in the past?
Well, the review of this survey will have additional steps to it. The school climate survey is a survey that's been in place for many years. And there is both a school level and a district level school climate survey that has a process in place for analyzing results and then providing feedback. And with this survey is a new survey to us. So only the central office administrators at first will have access to the raw data. And then, as we explained in the timeline, the next step would be to go to the school climate survey. The school climate committee will have discussions regarding the results and think about a theory of action. That in turn will go to the DEI task force. So I would say that there are more layers, more steps in place with our plan to analyze these results.
And
but
Jeff,
if the culture and climate survey that we've done for the last decade shows actionable results, then you would have gone to the administration and said, okay, we see we've got a bullying issue over here, or we've got maybe a problem on the bus over there. But then you would implement an action plan to speak to that, correct?
Yes, and that has been in place with the school climate survey analysis. The school leaders have created school goals in part using that data when appropriate.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand what the difference is between those protocols and the final result of those actions, and then comparing them to what the expectation should be for this going forward.
Jeff, I think that the focus might be a little bit broader, or kind of trying to get a broader picture of our students' experiences. So the climate survey. So when I'm looking at the two of these kind of side by side, the climate survey gives us
I think you're frozen right now.
It's a cliffhanger. While he's unfreezing, Jenny, you should have the slides at this point, and I think all board members should have them by email at this point. Did that clarify do you have any additional questions?
No, I just wanted to be able to refer back to them during the rest of the meeting without people having to constantly go back and share screen for all of that. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to cut you off when we skipped to Jeff.
I think Dr. Harrison is back.
Where'd he go?
I swear I have a bad connection every time I start talking. I apologize. I'm not sure where I was in my comments before.
When you look at them side by side.
Yes, when I look at them side by side, I feel like the traditional climate survey gives an initial picture, and then the DEI survey gives us a little bit more data, drills down a little bit more. And so I do think that part of the shift in the analysis is that this gives us a better picture. So we're not just sort of drilling in on smaller issues, but really looking at helping us to get a better picture for at the system level, at the way that we are able to respond and build a more diverse and inclusive and equitable environment for our kids.
If I can also tag on to that, Jeff, I think it's fair to say that with new leadership in central office, as well as in 50% of the Easton buildings, 50% of the Reading buildings, and 100% of the Region 9 buildings coming up, I think we're going to see a sort of renewed focus on sort of the results of all of these surveys and attention applied to it, both by our administrators as well as our board members, in a way that I frankly don't know that we've seen in such sort of concentrated ways in the past.
Thank you for your answer.
Continue with open questions. I saw Mike D'Agostino ahead.
Yeah, so just again, I want to make sure we're crystal clear to everyone. So I just want to follow up on a question that Jenny asked and the response. And so I want to just make sure that we're clear. Will all students require parental consent, or are we saying minor students require parental consent? Because there's a big difference there. And so I want to make sure that we are crystal clear if possible.
All students, parents must give consent for all students, minors, as well as students who are at an age of consent.
Okay, thank you.
Other clarifying questions from any board members? There are no further clarifying questions from any board members. We will look for a motion to start discussion with respect to action on the surveys. I see John Riley's hand up. John?
Yeah, Chris, I made the motion.
John Stinson, go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, a clarifying leading up to the motions. I don't believe that Easton Board of Ed and Reading Board of Ed are voting on the high school survey. Is that correct?
That would be my understanding. I think that one way to tackle this would be for all three boards to adopt a motion that would be to approve the student, staff, and parent surveys as proposed by the DEI task force, and that would work at all levels, unless any of the boards wanted to invoke additional specificity for clarity purposes. So I'm happy to take a motion from starting in Easton or in Reading if John Riley is so eager.
I don't want to jump the gun, but I'll make the motion that the Reading Board of Education approve the surveys for students, parents/guardians, and staff as presented by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force on May 25th, 2021.
Thank you, John. Is there a second to that motion in Reading? I see Heather waving. It's a second from Reading. Looking for the same motion.
Sorry, go ahead.
Easton or Region 9? I see Devin raising your hands.
Yeah, that's never. Devin, go ahead for Easton.
I'll call the motion. I'll call the question for Easton. Same motion.
Make the motion in Easton, Devin. Good.
I'll make the motion in Easton.
Thank you, Devin. I see Jenny seconding.
All right, for Region 9, Mike, do you want to make the motion?
Sure. I'm going to put a little twist on it, but it's essentially the same motion, which is I'm going to move the Region 9 Board of Education approve the recommendation of the DEI task force to provide parents, students, and staff the opportunity to participate in the DEI student and staff surveys as presented, to be administered in full compliance with all board policies for survey of students and consent of board council.
Did you exclude parents on purpose?
I thought I had it in there. Parents, students, and staff I had in there.
Okay. I heard students and staff at the end. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Second, Region 9. Cheryl, thank you.
The motions are substantially the same and can be discussed jointly in my view, unless either of the other movements wish to withdraw and replace with Mike's lengthier motion, but I'm content to move forward unless the movements are interested in substitution. Seeing none, what we can do is take initial comment, one round of opening comments from anybody across the three boards before we get into interactive discussion, and we can start with Easton and move around to ER9.
Comments in Easton? Jeff.
I'll ask the question that I wanted to ask earlier. Am I to understand that the committee is not going to consider any other adjustments or deletions to the questions in the survey?
The motion put on the table is to approve the surveys as drafted. There's nothing stopping any member of any board from moving to amend that motion, which would impliedly also include amendments to the underlying documents that would be approved.
Any additional comments? Opening round comments, not final comments? Yes, Devin.
So I would encourage the Easton board as well as the other boards to pass the surveys as is. I hope tonight's presentation was clarifying and that it demonstrates that parents have complete control and choice over if and then how their students take the survey in both middle and high school. And that it's also clarifying in the sense that we know for a fact, everyone here has said it, and I believe in my heart that every single person here cares deeply about every kid in our schools, but we know for a fact that not every kid is having the same experience and is having a good experience. And this is an opportunity for any child who answers the survey to lift up to our board or to our district leadership and to the school leadership so that they can take action to make sure that every student has an opportunity for academic success in our schools. So we have that opportunity today to give that power to our district leadership and our school leadership in order to make sure that every kid in our schools has an awesome experience. And I think that's a huge responsibility, and that's why we are all here. So I trust that we'll make the right decision going forward.
Thank you, Devin. Any additional opening comments from Easton? Yes, Jenny.
I feel like there's so much to say and then kind of and hard to say it, but the best thing about tonight was the presentation. I mean, the slide deck was just perfect, and I think it's what everybody needed to hear and see and understand. And I don't know, maybe sad is a little bit, just so unfortunate that we're at this place and it kind of feels like such a mess, and there are people opposing each other in the community or saying they feel dissension even, in their neighborhoods and amongst different groups. Hindsight's always 20/20. We can kind of go back and should and would on ourselves. I do wish a lot of this had been front loaded, very early on. I was even this morning, it was a diversity day of sorts at Trumbull High School, and I facilitated some activities from the Anti-Defamation League with a couple of my classes. And what I thought about going through it with them was, I wish we had done this as boards in the beginning, how useful it would have been or could still be for us to go sort of through some sort of almost like internal professional development, that if we had all understood the goals of this work and the intention and purpose of it very early on, and we're better able to speak to the public, and answer their questions, that we might be in a different place now. I think moving forward, it's absolutely imperative that we push this information out to people, and that we don't just say, you could have come to a meeting or everything, the minutes are all posted, that we find some more purposeful and intentional ways of sending this information out. Like how the slide deck from tonight, there are 118 participants on the call, but that barely scratches the surface as far as the number of students and staff and parents that we're responsible to. So, maybe we could think about pushing that out. Somebody mentioned something like creating an FAQ. So anyway, just thank you. I think the presentation tonight was wonderful, and I hope that it really goes a long way in addressing people's concerns. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny.
John, I'll just
Please, Randy.
I think I'll close out if, unless there's others here, but Kim Fox Santora has said this a number of times that I've been on the board, and she implores it at the elementary school level. Let kids be kids for as long as they can. And for me, I've heard that kind of loud and clear from our parents the last several weeks. And while I've, provided a couple of rounds of comments to the committee, and they've, I think, made a lot of great changes. For me personally, I need to see other changes in order to support this particular survey. I think the work that needs to be done is unquestionable. I think the conversations are already being had in the schools. I know they are, on all the issues we're touching on. And personally, I think we're maybe a little bit wrapped around the nomenclature and some of the specific questions. I hear it from the parents, we all do. So my 2 cents, I think we're close. I'd still like to see a number of changes, but it's not something that I'm going to support tonight.
Right. Thank you.
I have to agree with Randy. I think there were a number of areas where there was really very little change that needed to take place. The committee opted not to, and that's certainly their right and their privilege, and that's their responsibility actually to bring forth a survey that they feel is in the best interest. But I just don't think it hits the mark, and therefore I can't support it.
Okay. I think that that's all of, I think every member has spoken.
Anybody in Reading wish to make an opening comment?
May I comment? I also encourage the Reading board to accept these surveys as submitted. We've heard from so many current students, former students, and families how they have been waiting years to see themselves represented on a survey like this. And this is sort of like a byproduct of us putting this out there, is giving these people the ability to identify themselves in the way they want to be identified. And as was stated earlier, I don't see how that's taking something away from anyone. It's giving someone an opportunity that they have been waiting a very long time for, and that means a great deal to them. And I thank you, Maureen. I think you put it exactly perfectly, that this isn't just a way that we can measure, have a metric for success that we can measure ourselves against, but it's also giving marginalized people the opportunity to tell their stories in a safe and inclusive manner and bring them in from the margins. So again, I really hope that we approve these surveys as is, because it's so important to the people that it's important for, and the people who it's not, they don't have to take them.
Thank you, Heather. Other opening comment in Reading, Chris Huff?
Yeah, thinking as a board member to my colleagues on the other boards, I think part of our job is to sort of cut through the rhetoric and really focus on what we're really doing here. I've been struck by a couple things from the raft of emails and comments that we've gotten, is that almost everyone seems to have decided what the outcome of the survey is going to be before it's taken. And I'm talking about both sides. And almost everyone has, on both sides, has sort of presented this in kind of apocalyptic terms. And a couple of weeks ago, after I got the first round of comments, I thought, you know what, this isn't Armageddon. This is a survey. It is a tool. It is going to hopefully give us information that can be used in some form or fashion to make kids' lives better. It's not perfect. It's, not going to solve all the problems of the world. I am willing to believe, since there's absolutely no evidence for it, that it is not going to lead to, do I dare say, critical race theory? I mean, there's just no There's no evidence for that. And I'm sort of a literalist on this. And it's already been spoken to by Dr. Harrison. So I would agree that while you could probably massage this thing further, if you look at it as a tool and part of a process, there's really no need for that. So.
Thank you, Chris. Mike, did I see you starting to unmute? Go ahead.
I want to thank the residents of Easton and Reading for all the time they spent writing to us. If you add it all up, that's a lot of collective time spent. Folks on both sides of the issue for taking their time to write and comment. And try to keep it as short as I can. I feel that there's a line between what is a school responsibility and what is a parent responsibility. And as board members, I feel we need to be cognizant and do our best not to cross it. And I think surveying our 11-year-old students about gender identification and sexual orientation crosses that line, crosses it hard. And when we step across that line once with board permission, I think it's just going to be crossed again and again. Want to work on the bullying issue? I'm there. I mean, we have the surveys that say we have work to do. School climate and ERCCC both say we have work to do there. I'm ready to help on that initiative, but I can't support this survey for our middle schoolers, for 11-year-old kids.
Thank you, Mike. Other opening comments?
Can I say something?
Please, Colleen.
I don't have anything formally prepared. I also appreciate, I want to echo the sentiment that I really appreciate everyone reaching out to us. Our schools already collect gender identification, or they have over the years. My daughter's in 5th grade. I definitely have checked a box that she is a female or that she is a girl on school forms at one point. So to me, all of a sudden, and being concerned about collecting gender demographics when we've done it previously, shines a light on what the true heartache is. I don't know if we want to say lightning rod or heartache. To parents that this survey makes you feel uncomfortable, please don't take it. And to the students who need this survey, I think the appropriate action, although I'm nervous about it, I don't know if you can even hear it in my voice. I don't want to out anyone's family. I don't want to out any of our students. But for the students who need this survey, I think we need to provide it to them. It is a very delicate subject. I totally get that. I'm learning as I'm going. When you talk about the privilege, I don't know if you guys know me, but I am like the walking, talking version of privilege. And with that comes some ignorance, and I'm learning as I'm going. But I do think the appropriate action at this time is to provide a vehicle for our most vulnerable and marginalized students to speak to us. If the board chooses not to go forward and you're listening to this and you are feeling marginalized, there will be other ways for us to connect with you. And please don't lose the faith in us. We are working hard to get this right, but it might take multiple attempts.
Thank you, Colleen. John?
Yeah, I would echo, it's hard to follow what Colleen said, but I'd also echo some of what Chris Hocker said. And I'm just looking up on the CABE, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education's definitions of the responsibilities of a board member, and there are 11 bullet points, and I'll read the 5th one, which is to support a healthy school district culture for work and learning. And that's not just for most kids, it's for all kids. And there are kids who need this, and that's why I'm in support of it.
Thank you, John. Other opening comments from Reading? If there aren't, I would add first, To echo what some other folks said, we've received, by my count, close to 200 emails on this subject over the past 10 to 12 days. It's every time I check my email, there's 3 or 4 more of them. And they run the gamut from please yes, please no, all the way to heart-wrenching stories of personal traumas, and all the way over to conspiracy theories about the World Health Organization. We have been inundated, and I know, speaking for myself, I've read every word of every email, and I'm confident that most of or all of my colleagues have done the same. But what has struck me, the more I think about this whole process, and I've been attending these meetings, my ex officio capacity since July when the task force was formed, and I've been part of the process that helped identify members of the task force and sat through as the work of this survey evolved over several months, is something that has been kind of coming up frequently in our meetings, particularly since Dr. Harrison came on board and sort of adopted these goals as the linchpin and the through line of his work in our district. And that's our enduring ABC goals as 3 districts, one of which is building a caring community. And building a caring community is not a box to check. It is it must be ongoing and intentional, or it is simply meaningless. How can we be serious in our efforts to ensure that we reach every student, or respect one another, take care of ourselves, others, or the environment, unless we can establish a basic baseline? Who's being left out of our caring community? Who doesn't feel supported? Who's scared to ask for help? These are not radical questions. We've heard emotional testimony in our meetings and in task force meetings from former students about their experiences in our schools. Personally, I credit that experience with considerably more weight than the opinions of those who do not have recent lived experiences within the 4 walls of our buildings. The comments we've heard from those within the walls of our schools tell me that we don't yet know what we don't know. We know there are students struggling due to their identity, whether their experiences are discrimination, bullying, unfairness, or any other term that someone would like to load with a politically contentious connotation is irrelevant. We know that they exist. We hear stories of the courageous, but surely not of the less courageous, whose struggles are no less real. We also know that students achieve academically when they feel safe, seen, and supported. Do we not owe it to those underrepresented and marginalized students to understand their experiences? Who among us would reject the idea that classrooms should be inclusive spaces? If we are indeed committed to preparing students for a global world, we must embrace the diversity that exists in our own communities first. Not demand that children be shielded from it, or claim that bigotry or racism doesn't exist, so inclusion is irrelevant for our work. The students who report their own negative experience have already been harmed. Let us learn from it. Let us inform how we train our staff to be supportive beyond even their own comfort zones. Let's ensure future generations of students who are different can thrive. Let's practice what we preach and actually build a caring community. Students learn reading, writing, and math when they feel safe and included. Every student, regardless of their sex, gender, race, body size, sexual orientation, mental or physical disability, religion, or political beliefs, deserves an education in a school where they are made to feel comfortable and not marginalized. We use assessments to inform how we teach math. We should use assessments to inform how we meet the needs of marginalized students all the same. I reject the idea of using our school and our students as a proxy for a broader culture war built on straw man arguments. Our boards formed a joint committee and charged it with conducting an annual assessment of the state of equity, diversity, and inclusion in Easton, Reading, and Region 9. The proposed surveys are a reasonable step moving forward in that direction. Steph Alton?
Yep. Am I unmuted?
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. I'm going to keep it really short because Chris, that was amazing. And you pretty much hit on exactly what I was going to say. And a lot of the meetings that I've gone to were with Tom McMorrin, who we all respected. And he used to say, teach the whole child. That was a big thing that he said, and I think that's part of this. But the most important thing to me is I had a conversation with my daughter who just left Barlow last year, and she said to me in the car today, please, Mom, please make sure that you are preparing kids for the world that they are going to graduate into, not the world you graduated into. It's very different. And part of what you're supposed to do is not just teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. You're supposed to prepare kids for the world. And if you're not doing this, then you're not doing the right thing. So I fully support the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Other opening comments from Reading? Did we hear from everybody now, I think? Region 9?
That's from Region 9 board members. Mike, I see your hand, and then Maureen.
Why am I always first? Then?
Well, then you can pass. We'll go to Maureen first then.
Go to Maureen first. I'll.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Maureen.
I'll be brief. I mean, one of the things I wanted to say, which is not directly connected to the survey, is to salute all of these board members for the incredible amounts of lift they've done. And to tell people who have, summarily sent us emails that have been less than laudatory about the work we do, that they don't know us and they don't know the relationships between us. And they shouldn't misperceive any of our debates and acrimony that may exist as ill will towards one another. We all will get along, okay? At least that's my assessment of us. All right, that's one point. I could never in a million years be half as eloquent as Chris Parkin was, or Chris Hocker was, or Colleen was ahead of this. I can only say that this is information that we're getting. And anyone who turns down information really doesn't want to engage in a thoughtful analysis going forward. So I wholly support this survey. I wholly support it both because it's information and because it's a vehicle for marginalized students to come out and have their stories heard in an anonymous way that they may not be comfortable with, coming onto these meetings. It is not directing any particular outcome. It is not forcing a curriculum change. It is not even part of a curriculum change. It's just information, folks. And for that reason, I support the survey.
All right, others from Region 9? I see. Julia, go ahead. Mike, I still have you, don't worry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I would like to thank everybody who sent me some emails, and I definitely took the time to read through all of them. And I have to say, I feel like maybe I still haven't quite decided where I want to go on this, even at this point in the evening, but I do feel that the presentation really did help clarify for me how we're going to use the data that we do get from this. And I see it as an opportunity to create awareness. Maybe we aren't aware of what is going on in all these buildings, and maybe we thought that we were. And maybe there are students who are afraid to tell us things that are going on, and they do need a voice for that. But I also have an 11-year-old child, and I just don't know that I feel comfortable with some of the information on there. So I know that both Dr. Pearson-Ugal and Heather had told me that you can skip any questions that you want to skip. And I do think that maybe sitting there with your child is the best option. You can go through the questions. You can say, you know what, let's pass on this one. You answer this one. And maybe that's a nice compromise so that we can get some data and we can move forward and make some good change.
Thank you. Karen, did you have?
Yeah, but Mike can go first if he wants. I can. What do you want to do, Mike?
No,
go ahead. Karen. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. I would just like to say, I think that it's unfortunate that people on both extreme sides of this have done a huge disservice to our communities. Our board had barely received the draft survey in May when immediately the politicization began. We weren't even able to have an open discussion of the survey ourselves before we were inundated by a barrage of flyers and emails, inflaming everyone on both sides. To say that tensions are high is an understatement. I think that the end result of all this politicization has created a chasm between our neighbors, between students, between parents. There are many smart and thoughtful people on these boards, none of whom are Marxists, anti-white, or racist, nor are we trying to ruin childhood. And I don't think that people appreciate how many of those types of emails we got, but we did get an inordinate amount of supportive and kind emails appreciating the hard work we do. But that being said, that's not my point. My point is that this has turned this into a battleground. And I agree with Chris Hocker. This isn't the end of education as we know it. This isn't apocalyptic. This is an information tool. And with the presentation this evening, it's clear that parents have complete control over whether or not their child can participate. They can decide what their child is exposed to. But let's make sure that all of this angst is not going to lead, is going to lead to better outcomes for our students. Thank you.
All right, others from Region 9? All right, before I go to Mike, I'd just like to say I too appreciate that we sent the survey out to council earlier and they gave us guidelines, and I would ask before this one goes out that we do send it back to council just in case. So we are boards of education, and we're sending this out to our employees, to the staff. We just want to make sure again that we as board aren't crossing lines that we shouldn't be from the types of survey questions that are in there. And if we need any legal disclaimers or anything like that for people opting in, that we put those on there so that we don't open ourselves up to lawsuits or anything along those lines. So I do ask that we send this version out since it's changed dramatically since the earlier ones. Thanks to all the work for the task force for doing that. But I would like to see it go out again before we send it out to the public. And then Mike, I think you had a question.
Thanks. It's in our motion, Todd, just so you know. So it's going to need to be done. So I also want to thank everyone who took the time to reach out and share their support, their thoughts, and their concerns related to these surveys that are under consideration tonight. Especially the students. It's great hearing from all of our students, and I'm happy to try to respond to each and every one of them. I did my best again, but just too many. There was one commonality that kind of stood out in the text of every email that I received, and it was the best interests of our students and our children, right? Every email, whether it was in full support or it was vehemently opposed, referenced or implied striving to do what's best for all of our students. And I feel like it's important for each of us to recognize this commonality along with our unified vision to provide best for our students, the best provide for those students. And as school board members, we strive to foster a learning environment that embraces every student. And this is not a partisan statement. I feel like it accurately reflects the values of our community as a whole. Amid much confusion, let's just restate that all of these survey offerings are opt-in. And so parents and families who are uncomfortable addressing or discussing anything in the survey with their children can simply omit the question or choose not to participate. The integrity of the data, as well as the task of disseminating and safeguarding it, will be the responsibility of Dr. Harrison. And I have great confidence in his abilities, and I know that he will use this information appropriately when needed to make recommendations to the boards for enhancing the educational and social emotional experience for our students. I want to urge everyone to set aside the divisive rhetoric and the personal insults. Please be respectful to your friends and your neighbors with opposing views. We should all agree that children need to feel welcome and embraced in order to be successful. And we need to continue to work to foster a welcoming learning environment that embraces every student. Thank you.
All right, anyone else from Region 9? Cheryl?
I went back and forth about whether I should say anything, but I will. And I deliberately went last, and I'll tell you why. Marginalization has been going on for a long time. I have personally experienced it. Most recently last week during a discussion on the equity inclusion statement, particularly the word using around the word systemic bias and unconscious bias. This reminded me of two things. This work, giving our students a comfortable space to share their vulnerabilities. And for whatever reason, takes a lot of time. Understanding takes time. But in the example that Steph shared earlier about her own daughter, it's not about the parents, it's about her students. That's why we're all here. There are no sides. we're politicizing this. Our students are not. Just listening to our students for what they support or they need to be and what they need to be successful, happy, and support our schools is, for my vote, the most important thing and the only reason why I serve. And if we can even help one child feel less isolated for whatever reason, I will always vote yes and do what I can to support them. And I hope my colleagues do the same.
All right, anyone else, Region 9? All right, back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Todd. As we're completed the opening comments, we'll now open the floor for general discussion with respect to the motions that are pending on all three boards. So I'd be open to any additional discussion from any of the boards or any subsidiary motions with respect to the main motions.
Would it be possible for Mike D'Agostino, did you have that typed up, Mike, your motion?
It came right off the top of my head. Yeah. Yes, I do.
Because are you saying that you mentioned review from legal counsel? Is that what you were saying to Todd? That your motion includes that?
It is there, yes.
Okay, can you read it again then?
Okay. So it's moved that the Region 9 Board of Education approve the recommendation of the DEI Task Force to provide parents, students, and staff the opportunity to participate in the DEI student, parent, and staff surveys as presented, to be administered in full compliance with all board policies for surveys of students and consent of board council.
Got it. Thank you. I missed that part. Thank you.
That was Mike saying that Region 9 is going to pick up the legal bill for all three districts.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
With that said, then I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Colleen. Any other discussion from any corner?
I'd like to amend the Easton. Sorry, Heather.
No, go ahead.
I just want to amend the, I think Devin made our motion that would basically capture what Mike just said, obviously for Easton as opposed to Region 9.
So you'd like to amend the main motion to be, to basically replace it with Mike's replacing Region 9 with Easton?
The D'Agostino motion.
Right, okay. So it's a motion to substitute the main motion with what we're going to now call the D'Agostino motion.
And he's going to be immortalized for that.
I think I heard John say he did the same, and I'll second.
Yes.
Okay, let's just take it one at a time. And Easton is a motion from Randy to substitute the main motion with the D'Agostino motion. Is there a second in Easton? Devin. John, were you trying to make the same motion to substitute your motion?
Yes.
And Heather, are you seconding the motion to substitute the motion?
Yes.
Looking first in Easton, is there any objection to substituting the motion? Seeing none, John, I assume you're comfortable deeming that approved?
Correct.
Same question in Reading. Is there any objection to substituting the motion?
We have
Seeing
to call it the D'Agostino motion.
Mr. Mike D'Agostino motion.
Seen on the Michael D'Agostino of Reading motion is adopted. And so all three motions are now substituted to be identical with the exception of Easton Reading Region.
Can I move to call the question?
You can move to call the question. Is there any objection to calling the question? I'll look for the same motion in Easton then, please. Unless there's an absence of discussion, in which case I'll call it in the discretion of the chair.
So moved. Call the question.
Okay, Devin moves to call the question. Do I have a second? No. Jeff.
The second in Easton from Jeff. Is there a motion to call the question in Region 9?
So moved.
Call the question.
Mary Lee. Question.
Yeah, Mary Lee.
Hold on. Can I just ask a question? Does calling the question mean we have no discussion?
Calling the question is calling for a vote, yes.
Why are we skipping discussion?
We were in discussion and then there were motions made to end discussion, and now those motions will be considered. So my first question would be whether or not there's any objection to calling the question. It sounds like, Jenny, you're objecting to calling the question.
Yes, I'm objecting to calling the question. I don't think we should be calling the question until all boards have had a chance for discussion.
Okay, so I'll note that
did not pass. Yep.
Well, I'll note that discussion was open to all boards and the motion to call the question was made. A motion to call the question requires a 2/3 vote to close discussion and move to a vote. Noting for all boards that there seems to be an interest in continuing discussion from at least one board, I would offer the opportunity for the movements to withdraw their motions as a courtesy. Otherwise, we'll take we'll call the vote on the previous question.
I don't think we've made a motion and seconded. We had a motion, but I think we got cut off before the second in Region 9, just for clarification.
Oh, I saw 3 hands going up in Region 9.
Yeah.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, the motion is withdrawn in Easton. John?
You're looking at John Riley, correct?
I'm looking at John Riley.
Yep.
Oh, okay. It was Heather's motion, but.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. The motions to move to the previous question are withdrawn. Discussion is continued. Jenny, do you wish to be recognized? Okay. Any further discussion with respect to the motions on the table now? So if there is no further discussion, then we'll move to the question, but I'm looking for any additional discussion. Jenny?
If you guys will bear with me for a minute, I just wanted to talk to some of, I know, more reluctant board members, and to also some of the parents that I've been speaking to, one for a very long period of time on my front steps the other day. And these are very well-meaning, wonderful contributors to our community who have expressed concerns. And I just want to say that I think that the presentation tonight, the clarity about the intended purpose and the data collection, et cetera. And even, I've spoken sort of against the idea or not been comfortable with the idea of telling people, well, you just don't have to take something. But I think that folks have really clearly articulated why that is an okay option under these circumstances. For other discussions that we've had as an Easton board, haven't loved that response sometimes from the administration. But to the effect that this creates that space for kids and families and staff members, right, to share with us experiences that they might not otherwise be able to share, that it's okay, and I don't know if it would help to hear, how I sort of see this as a teacher over the last few years. And I can't say that before 3 or 4 years ago, I ever had a circumstance in a class where I was contacted by what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, guidance counselor or administrator or parent to talk about their student's gender identity. That's really been a recent development. I've been teaching for over 21 years, and it's only in the last 3 or 4 that it's become prevalent in discussions or team meetings. And I need help with that. I absolutely need help with that. Sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake, or I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to do something unintentionally that's going to make that child feel uncomfortable. This is my first year at Trumbull High School, and I only teach 2 classes of 9th graders, which is roughly 40 students. And I have 2, so I can't speak to the statistical significance of that, but I have 2 students that are, going through some of these changes and working through some of these problems. I don't want to even call it a problem. They're working through these things. It's a change in their lives. And I need to be aware of it as their teacher. And I definitely don't feel completely prepared all the time to address it, in the best way. I certainly try, but in terms of PD and training and, giving our faculty the opportunity to know what to say and to thoughtfully prepare lessons that are not going to, that are not going to cause any further damage. As a biology teacher, a life science teacher, I can see how this, and I've spoken against the idea of curriculum changes and making people fearful, but there are going to be classes where certain topics are going to maybe need some tweaking or adjustment. I'm thinking about the topics I've taught on genetics and reproduction, and where certain things are all sort of couched under the idea of genetic disorders, how that's going to need to be looked at, and I can see how maybe textbooks are going to go through some modest changes, just to account for some of those things moving forward. So I realize some of these are personal and private issues for some families. And I just am kind of trying to talk to that sort of middle of the road family member who's concerned about what is this going to look like, and is it going to align with family values, or how I want to discuss this with my children. And I really am feeling better and trusting at this point about how the information is going to be used. And just want to thank Dr. Harrison and Dr. Pearson, you all again for taking the lead on this tonight, and sharing that perspective with us.
Thank you, Jenny. Any other comments? Further discussion?
I think Karen is looking to be recognized.
I can't see Karen.
I just wanted to say that honestly, coming into tonight, I truly was on the fence. I was understanding of both sides of the argument and people's fear about, not wanting to expose their children to certain things, especially at the younger grade, at the 6th grade. But the presentation tonight absolutely helped my understanding of it. And like Jenny, I really do appreciate just going through the step-by-step and how, all the information goes directly to the person's email and how they can control whether it gets seen or not. That absolutely helped to take some of the angst out of it for me. And I hope that it will take some of the angst out of it for parents and students who are the ones that would be the audience for this survey. This isn't for me who's not in the school anymore, or my kids aren't in the school anymore. This is for the people who are in the school who are dealing with this. This isn't for people who are retired, and yes, I understand you have an interest in the school system, but this is for these students now in this day and age. And I hope that that this relieves some of the fear of parents and students, and I hope this helps.
Thank you, Karen. Chris Hocker.
I just hope that kids and families who are not marginalized take this survey. I think that, one of the things that needs to be emphasized is that the survey is for all kids. And there are opportunities in the survey to make your voice heard. And there's nothing on the front of it that says, do not answer unless you're feeling marginalized. It's not there. It's not there. And I think that would go a ways to alleviate some of the concern about, well, what if we just get a certain cross-section responding to the survey? Well, that's easy. Don't. And just answer the questions you're comfortable answering and say what you want to say. There's that opportunity. And I think it would give a much broader degree of information, which is what we're looking for.
Thank you. Chris, any additional discussion? Seeing none. Jenny, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just let me jump back in for 1 second. I just want us to address the amount of concern that's been out there that was, about pushing something through, delaying this, the timing, why do you feel like you need to cram it in before the end of the year? And over the weekend, I was just thinking so much about how much of this has happened under crisis circumstances. The creation of the committee happened sort of before, the world felt like it fell apart. But a lot of the work has gone on while all these months that we've been over Zoom, all of these months that the kids have been in and out of school and our administration has been in crisis mode. We've all been in crisis mode with our families. Everyone has been doing absolutely the best they can, including the committee, including families who are just now saying to us, hold on a second, wait, what? I feel like we're kind of emerging from this crisis period and at nearing summer, and people are starting to think about what life is going to look like. And for some, it sort of felt like, hold on a second, what were you doing? What were you talking about? And as much as we might look backwards and say this was an imperfect process, or, you know, even I would say, I wish we had front loaded this in the beginning. I wish we had done this. I wish we had done that. I think we also need to give grace to the people that were involved in doing this work, that they were also, you know, working through this in crisis mode. And maybe under different circumstances, we all would have approached this differently. And maybe under different circumstances, families would have been more in tune with what was going on. You know, and again, I was sort of on the fence about things, but, you know, I can see how moving forward now, I do think moving forward is okay if we can keep that in mind. You know, if we as board members can remember to accept everyone into the process whenever they do raise to that level of awareness, you know, and not respond back to them with things like, well, the minutes are posted, you know, you could have been at this meeting. You know, we need to just say, okay, you know, let us bring you up to speed. Let us listen to your questions. Let us give you the information you're looking for. And from the public to the people that started this process a long time ago and have created these surveys, that everybody's doing it with the best of intention. So that's all. I just really wanted to speak to the timing.
Thank you, Jenny. Mike D'Agostino, I see your hand.
So just barring any discussion related to the specifics of any questions or the timing or anything like that, I'd like to renew the call the question.
Okay, why don't I just, Gwen, is that a second? Okay. Just very quickly, if anybody else wished to be heard, sort of jump around now. And if not, then I'll take it without the motions all around and we'll simply call the question. So I'd look for any objection to calling the question for anybody else who wishes to be heard. And if there isn't, then we'll go ahead and call the question, and I'll start with Easton, please, John.
In Easton, so Jenny?
I think I'm confused about the process right
I
now.
think we're actually voting now.
We're now voting on the D'Agostino motion.
Okay, then yes.
Thank you. Jeff?
No.
Thank you. Devin?
Yes.
Thank you. Randy?
No.
I vote yes. The motion passes 3-2.
Moving on to call the question in Reading. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
John?
Yes.
Steph?
Yes.
Chris Hocker?
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion carries 6-1 in Reading. Region 9, please.
And in Region 9, calling the question, Cheryl,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Juliet,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mary Lee,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
and I'll abstain. So it passes 7 with 1 abstention.
Thank you. That concludes item.
Can I ask a quick question about what just happened there? So the
Go
call the question only needed Mike D'Agostino, I write Dag in my notes, sorry, Mike, and Gwen?
No, the motion was not considered because absent objection, the discussion had ended and we moved to the question, the chair's discretion.
Okay.
That resolves item 3 on the agenda, which brings us to item 4 on the agenda, which brings us to the second round of public comment. And I would make the same admonitions at the beginning of the public comment period, which is to keep comments to the educational program of Easton and Reading, to avoid crosstalk between commenters and keep ad hominems to yourself, and limit your comments to 2 minutes. And I would also note for board members and the public that at the conclusion of this meeting is the regular monthly meeting of the Reading Board of Education. So please bear that in mind and be respectful of time. If you're wishing to be heard in public comment, please raise your hand using the participants window or the reactions button to raise your digital hand. And we'll start with Beth Nat, please.
Hi, how are you? Beth Knapp from Maple Road in Easton. Just a sincere thank you for all of you guys for rational conversation tonight, and thank you for passing this.
Thank you, Beth. Jen DeJesus.
I just want to thank everyone for passing this very important resolution that includes making sure that all of our students feel included. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Beatrix Erickson. Oh, I'm sorry. Jen, can we have your street and town, please?
I'm so sorry. Laurel Drive, Easton.
Did you get that, Colleen?
Laurel Drive, Easton?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
That was my fault. Thank you, Colleen. Beatrix, go ahead.
Hi, Beatrix Erickson, 27 Sidecut Road in Reading. I just want to say thank you so much for your vote this evening and for such open and frank dialogue. I think it's so important that both sides be heard, and I'm grateful for the respectful way that this process has been handled, and very pleased with the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Beatrix. Carolyn?
I want to thank the board for, again, I'm just reiterating what most people have said. Thank you very much for the conversation that was clear. Thank you very much to Superintendent, Dr. Pearson-Ugal and Dr. Harrison for such a clear presentation that I do think made all the difference. We, based on having a child that is within the marginalized groups, I really appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn. Agnes?
Hi, Agnes Bebon, Black Rock Turnpike, Easton. I also just want to echo thanks for the board for time. I know a lot of these meetings go long and a lot of the topics are very hot right now. Yeah, thank you for listening to the marginalized voices in the community, and thank you for volunteering your time.
Thank you. Agnes. Marnie? Oh, Marnie and then Jack.
All right, I'm here. Sorry. I just wanted to reiterate what I had written.
Street and town, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this is exactly what I had emailed to the board, which is Marnie Waywa, 108 Flat Rock Road. I support the DEI survey. I honestly hope that my brief comment will help to ease the minds of some of the parents who are wary of their children participating in this survey. I identify as straight, heterosexual, and white Caucasian. You could have given me this survey at 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 53 years, my current age. My answer would have been A, no idea what you were talking about depending upon my age, or B, straight and white. Surveys do not and cannot change your child's age, skin color, or sexual orientation. So I really do like, I would like to thank the board for passing this.
Thank you. Marnie. Next, I see Jack.
Jack Bebon, Black Rock Turnpike in Easton. I also just wanted to come up here to thank you all for passing these surveys and for uplifting voices of the marginalized communities. I know I wish I had a survey like this in school, and I know people are really going to appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Next, I see Stephanie.
Hi. Two things. One, I would love if you would consider sending information home to parents so that they understand what their kids are going to be taught, if just around how to interact with their peers. So that might help some of the families that are more conservative on this topic. And two, thank you for your efforts and hard work.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any additional public comment? Vanessa.
Hi, Vanessa Allward, Cross Highway, Reading. Joined the meeting late and was lucky enough to hear all the positive comments and that it's passed, and wanted to say thank you very much. Thank you for everybody for having an open mind and open heart and allowing those who are maybe on the fringe or that are not considered what is normal for some people or everyday for others, whether it's their skin color, their religion, their sexual orientation, or their gender identity. So thank you for listening and being open-minded.
Thank you, Vanessa. Julia?
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to thank Dr. Pearson-Ugal and Dr. Harrison for their presentations this evening. I found them very helpful as well. I also want to thank all the board members who have worked tirelessly and the committee members on this mission statement and on the survey and all the dialogue. So there have been so many eloquent statements. I will keep mine very brief. Again, thank you. Thank you for voting on the survey. I hope that parents who are uncomfortable with this feel more comfortable because there are the parental controls in place. Although, as Chris Hocker pointed out, we would like every student to take this. But putting aside the culture wars, we need to be sure in our schools that all children feel safe and all of their voices are heard. And I feel that children will have an opportunity to take this survey, be heard, and we can do what we need to do as a community to address their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Last call for public comment. Seeing no additional public comment, we'll move on to item 5 of the agenda, which is board member comment. And we'll go with, starting with Easton, please.
Thank you. Any public comment in, or sorry, board member comment in Easton? Yes, Devin.
So first, I just want to say thank you to all 3 boards. These are challenging topics to discuss in such a public way. And so I always appreciate the open dialogue and the respect that each of us shows to one another and to really understanding people's different perspectives. So thank you to the board. I also want to just thank the DEI task force, especially the working group. You know, Heather, Susan, and Beatrix, you know, it was really great working with you and putting together the survey with so much input. And I just appreciate all of the hard work and hours that were put in on the weekend and the mornings and late evenings to kind of pull it, to work this survey and to get feedback and to make sure that people were heard. So thank you for your dedication and hard work. It's really appreciated. And just then finally to the community, especially to our students who have shared their really painful experiences. I'm sorry that it took sharing your pain to get to a survey that recognizes your experiences, but I'm so grateful that you were willing to be brave to share your experiences so that we can prevent other students from having to go through anything like what you've been through. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Devin. Any additional comment from other Easton board members? Yes, Jenny.
I just wanted to echo something that Chris Hocker had mentioned before about this not being perfect. And for just to kind of implore the public and all of us to realize that, you know, this is our first try at this. And, you know, to remember that, you know, the committee is going to be doing ongoing work, and with central office, pardon me, the hamsters acting up in the background. You know, it's not perfect. I don't love all the questions. I definitely have concerns about some of the questions, specifically in the faculty survey, because I want them to all, I don't want there to be any suggestion that they have to be one way or another to do their job and to do it well. And I think those are conversations that just need to continue. And also to think that, you know, the results and the feedback from the survey is also going to help us to inform and tweak future surveys, you know, moving forward. That these questions aren't set in stone for time and memoriam. You know, we don't have any set schedule of delivery, you know, of the survey, that this is really just, it's a first try, you know, and that there will be time for discussion and reflection even after it's given and the data is collected. I was going to say something else and I totally forgot. So I'll just stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Any additional board member comment in Easton? Okay, I'll take a moment. First, I want to say that those who voted against it, I know these people who voted against it. I know them to be good, decent people who have done a lot of good, and their families have done a lot of good for our communities. I know that they care about the students. I know that we disagree. I believe deeply in this work. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think we've gone about it in a careful way. It's okay that we disagree. And I think through continued conversation, I think we may come to find different truths in each other's point of views. And I hope that we will continue to do that. I respect the hell out of Mike Hoffman, Jeff Parker, Randy Hicks. I think there are people who are trying to do good things in this world, and we need everybody doing that. I would also like to apologize to Cheryl and to Rydell for not standing up more for the things that that you believe were important in the surveys last week when we talked about in the statement last week. I didn't appreciate or understand, and afterwards came to better understand the sensitivity of some of the language that you felt was important there. And I will try to do better in the future to stand up for you and for others who need another voice in the conversation. That's it from me.
Thank you, John. Board member comment I'm sorry, Jenny.
I'm sorry, I think Jenny's trying to be. Yep.
Sorry, I remembered the other thing I wanted to say. That was just to implore everyone to please not let this create further division. Knowing that not everyone is happy with is 100% happy with the result. Just for everybody to just kind of take a step back and hear the information that was shared tonight, and just not, people spoke about sort of the the polarized views that have kind of made this so difficult to work through, and just to everybody to keep being kind to one another and keep listening.
Board member comment from Reading. Heather?
I also wanted to publicly apologize to Cheryl Graziano and Dr. Harrison for my part in removing the word systemic from our statement after they both explicitly told us how important it was to them, and to thank Julianne publicly also for holding me accountable. I appreciate that. And to all the kids and families who come to all our meetings and speak out and come to every board meeting, thank you, we hear you. And I know it's not hard, and I know that there are more people who don't feel comfortable speaking out for many reasons, but we know that you're there also. And especially to the task force, all the members of the task force, specifically the working group that Devin mentioned, who worked so hard on this. Beatrix, who you heard from before, and Susan. And then, because I don't know how many people are going to be coming to the Reading meeting, which is coming up in just a few minutes, I wanted to say to John Reed Middle School, who had their very first, I believe it was their very first Pride Day today. Congratulations, and that's awesome.
Thank you, Heather. Other comment from Reading?
I just want to echo the thanks for the patience and guidance of the task force. I believe Heather referred to this as step one, and what an effort it was. And emotions are running high, right? You can sense it from us all. I appreciate the support that you've given me as I learn more about this, and that you've helped our community move in a direction I think that will help our students who haven't been heard from as much before.
Other comment in Reading, Mike.
Awfully nice comment, John Stinson. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other Reading comments, I would just point out that when 21 board members come together, we have a tendency to fight over the color of the sky, and have come to blows over very minor things. And even in the past year on Zoom have gotten hackles up about lots of different things. And so I greatly appreciate the tenor of the conversation and the respectful nature of the conversation. We do not all agree on where this has come out or should come out, but it doesn't take away from the thoughtful way in which everybody has expressed their opinions, listened to each other, and resolved the issue in a professional way that I think is a testament to the way that the 20 of us have worked together through the past year at this point. Region 9.
Dr. Harrison has had his hand up.
Board member comment, Region 9.
I'm sorry.
I can wait until after Region 9.
Any board member comment, Region 9? Cheryl, go ahead.
John and Heather, that's exactly the kind of honest dialogue that I think anyone, whether you feel marginalized or not, would want, that honesty and vulnerability. And that's exactly the kind of work I think when the 21 of us approved this task force last year, I think I'm hoping that's what we had in mind. And so again, John and Heather, thank you for your bravery with sharing that in a public forum. I promised myself I would keep it together. I'm still trying. So I do appreciate that. And I look forward to the continued dialogue, as Colleen and others have said today, and even last call, there's a lot of work to be done. And this is only the beginning. And there's, you know, what I will do for myself, and I hope others do, is check your own bias, check your own baggage at the door, have an honest discussion. If we don't do that, there's no way to move forward. And again, we're doing it for our students. And so that's my guiding light. And again, appreciate and look forward to the dialogue. Thank you to the task force. Excellent for putting your necks out there. And Heather, fantastic job as chair. We would have never picked anybody better than you to chair it. So I do appreciate your efforts. This is tough, but we'll keep going.
Anyone else, Regina? Mary Lee?
I also just want to say a quick thank you to the students who wrote and spoke and let us know about the difficulties that they faced. And it all goes toward being, you know, for those being successful, academically successful as well. I mean, because we are a Board of Education, in order for students to learn, to be able to learn, they do have to feel comfortable. And the DEI task force is helping us to make sure that we help our students be comfortable so that they can learn. Thanks.
Anyone else for Regina? Okay, back to you, Chris.
Mr. Harrison.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of the board members, just for your dedication, your willingness to have tough conversations. And we had a meeting last week that went almost till 2 a.m. And that, I think, speaks to your dedication. But I also want to say just a quick word to the community, the people who are still listening in, to the dozens of people who were still on with us at 1:30 in the morning last week. That the one thing that I could say that I found in this community is that there is a real sincere interest in what our students need and what's best for them. And even if that might look different based on people's different experiences or thoughts, there really is a genuine concern for our students. And as the superintendent, I appreciate knowing that there's a community that's standing by to support our students in really meaningful ways. One of the things that I've said to a number of people about this survey is it is a great opportunity for us to get information, to gather data that will help us to make some smart decisions going forward. But a huge byproduct of the survey is that students who have otherwise not felt seen or heard will feel seen and heard. And for me as an educator, that is just something that's hugely important, and it directly ties back to a lesson that I learned from a student in my last district, Evan Davidson, who I think I spoke of in my interview. And he said that adults shouldn't make decisions about kids without hearing from kids, from students. And so I think that this survey is a way for us to get some meaningful input from our students who are at the heart of every decision that we make, and every policy that we put in place, every book that we purchase, every dollar that's spent. And so I am proud to know that we have a new way for students' voices to be lifted up, and looking forward to being able to work with that data and make some smart decisions going forward. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. And that brings us to item 6, which is adjournment. Look for a motion to adjourn from Easton.
Do we have a motion to adjourn in Easton? I see Jenny. And I see
Second.
Devin seconding. And all in favor? Very good. I see everyone's hand. We're unanimously adjourned at 9:26 p.m.
Region 9.
For motion to adjourn Region 9,
Karen,
see Karen, and second,
Gwen.
Gwen, thank you. And all in favor? Aye. All right, carries unanimously. We're adjourned at 9:26.
Same motion in Reading.
Reading.
Mike, second. Heather, any objection? Hearing none. The Reading special meeting and the joint special meeting is adjourned at 9:26 p.m. And the Reading regular Board of Education meeting will start in 3 minutes at 9:30. You can stay